Hello, franchise friends. Good afternoon to you all. Happy Friday. If you've made it this far, you're doing very well indeed. But it's lovely to see you, and thanks for joining us today. This is a bit of an experiment, but what I'm doing is just having a chat with one of my old franchising friends, and we're just going to kick the ball around a little bit about franchising. Some of the key things that are happening at the moment. It is it's a live stream, so please feel free to ask any questions you like, interject, comment, whatever you want to do. I mean, at the end of the day, it's Friday, and this could be the opportunity to get some answers to some of those questions that have been nagging you for some time. But let me just introduce myself. My name is Simon Wise. I'm famous in franchising, I guess, for my staff and executive recruitment business called FranRec, and I'm delighted to welcome a good buddy of mine, Mark Scott. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Simon. I'm very well indeed. Thank you very much for inviting me along. So I'm really excited to be part of it and see where this is going to take us.
Yeah, do you know what? I just thought it's Friday afternoon. Let's have a franchise chat. Let's just kick the ball around a little bit and see where it takes us, because I think we've both been in the industry for similar periods of time, and a lot's happened over that time, hasn't it, really? And I guess to say that we're faced with some challenges at the moment is a bit of an understatement, but yeah, it's good to talk, as they say, at the end of the day. But listen, just before we kick off into the meat and potatoes, what's news with you? I mean, you've got some exciting news, haven't you? Let's be honest, because you've just started a new venture. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Yeah, so I joined franchising 1998, so this is my 28th. Well, at some point this year, will be entering my 29th year. But obviously, for those of you who are less familiar with me, I spent 39 years at NatWest, 25 of those in the franchise team, and most of it heading it up. So yes. I saw all sorts of franchises at that point, good, bad, and extremely ugly, I think, in that period of time.
Hang on, you're the man that put a double-decker bus in the middle of an exhibition hall, weren't you?
Absolutely, we did several times. A nice big blue one. I think it might have been white the first time we did it as well, but yeah. And then obviously moved on to a very different role as MD of Azure Franchise Management System, doing bespoke systems for about 50 franchisors. So, and then a couple of months ago, at the beginning of this year, I joined PartnerWise Franchise, which is a franchise consultancy, which we do all the sort of range of that, typical sorts of things, from assisting businesses to see if they are a franchise business or franchisable, as we like to call them in our industry, through to then getting them ready with a massive sort of list of things for each of us to do. And then the final bit of that, and the ongoing bit forever, if you like, is helping them to recruit franchisees, which is I know is going to be a big part, I suspect, of what we're going to talk about, and something we always do.
Yeah, it's always been the important part. Interesting. Well, what's the appetite like at the moment amongst the business community for franchising? I mean, you're obviously doing a lot of initial discussions and feasibility. Is there a strong appetite for franchising amongst the business community as a growth model?
I think there's always been an interest in it. I mean, it is, you sort of have to have the right mindset about it. Some people fall into it because they've heard about it, or they've had a person come to them saying, "Oh, are you a franchise?" and they have to find out a lot about it. But we still get a fair amount of new inquiries, and I think that's the same. I speak across our sort of industry of consultants. You probably speak to any of them, and there's always feast and famine. Sometimes not so busy because people have got concentrating on other things, but there's always people out there looking at the sector and thinking about whether it's right for them. I think there's an awful lot of food and beverage in the sector, so that's often a point of reference for us looking at it. But there's all sorts of things. I was speaking to a customer the other day that is in a very niche part of the business world, and whether they can do it or not remains to be seen. But they're looking and doing all the right sort of things about thinking about it.
Yeah, that's good, and that's the important thing as well. You're not just about one industry sector. I mean, you can support businesses from any sector. I guess there's been a massive influx of QSR, food and beverage brands, isn't there, into the industry sector?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, does that worry you at all?
Don't worry me. Well, it depends on what their offer is and how strong they are as a brand. But I mean, if I go back to those halcyon days in the late 90s when we were around, I think there were only a very few of them.
Yeah.
There was probably only Wimpy, which are still around actually. We've got a local one down the road here. McDonald's, obviously, Burger King, KFC was pretty much about it, I think. I remember Costa and Starbucks and all the others coming along sort of around that time, and there's certainly an awful lot of the coffee businesses franchise now. It seems to make sense to have that sort of local personality often driving it, as opposed to maybe someone that's unknown or what have you.
Yeah, I mean,
it's certainly.
I think to the outside world, franchising is still synonymous with fast food, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think the other thing is, as our palates have changed in that 20, 30 years, we're more willing as a culture to try new flavors and that sort of thing. So the plethora of other options around is there's such a vast choice to choose from. You just got to make sure you're choosing one that is profitable, I guess, and has a good track record.
Yeah, good. So I mean, in terms of where we're at the moment and the challenges, we have to talk about recruitment, because I'm a recruiter. I recruit staff and execs, as you know. And it's tough. It's a tough market out there. The conditions are not exactly conducive to people taking on additional staff. But we're obviously seeing quite a challenging time in franchisee recruitment as well. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think that is, most certainly. I think it's been like that for a while, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in the BFA survey for NatWest for probably 20 odd years. And every year, pretty much the biggest concern of franchisors was finding franchisees. So it's not just a current thing, it's always been an issue because there's never enough people looking at it, and it is quite challenging. So you do need to often educate people a little bit more about it to start with, but it is quite challenging. Do people want to start a business when there are so many headwinds? You sort of alluded to it there with the high labour costs and increasing costs just generally to run a business. And I think franchisees may be reticent to increase their own charges to the end user, the client, the customer, whatever you want to call them, because they don't want to be seen as too expensive. But I think if you look at the cost of anything in recent times, it has increased. So you have to do it with reason, I think, with some research maybe behind you before you do it. So you've really got to look closely at the cost, not just now if you're coming in, but what it might be. What's the possibility of things happening in the future? So franchisor may have a good track record, but you've got to take account of things around the corner, what headwinds are coming, and some of those we just don't know what's going to be there.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I mean, franchisee recruitment, it's tough. It is tough, as we already said. I mean, I don't know anybody at the moment that's sort of knocking it out of the park, or any franchise recruiters that are hitting double digits. But I mean, what can we do about it? I mean, yes, there are some external factors at the moment. Talk about policy and economic, and what have you.
I think recruitment's changed quite a bit. If I go back those 30 years, you might remember this as well, Simon. Most of the people coming into the industry were individuals looking to run one location. There were a few there probably wasn't many multi-brand operators, but there were a few multi-unit operators around in that time. But what we saw shortly after that, starting in the noughties, was franchisees coming in and growing that, one brand and then on to others. And so I think the industry is very split in terms of franchisees. You've got these multi-unit, multi-brand operators looking for another option within that to diversify maybe around some of the things that are out there. But then you've still got the individuals that have had enough of whatever it is they're doing, or got an opportunity with some money to own their own business, which is what they've always wanted to do. So you've still got, but it is sort of, one is very different to the other. So as a franchisor, you've also got to think about what type of individual do you want the individual person to run it and be pretty hands-on and be the life and soul of that location and that area, or do you want someone to come in and be more almost a mini corporate and run it that way?
No, definitely. I mean, the franchisee, the franchisee avatar is the important one, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Who is it that you're trying to attract, and then where do you go to find these people? Is just as challenging these days. But I think some of the trends I've seen recently is more about personal branding, less than the logo, for example. It's how do you behave, and also how do the key people within that business behave? How are they seen, if they're seen at all? Because some people are more shy and retiring and just focusing on strategy and what have you, but others are out there all the time commenting on things and what have you. So it's how you see those individuals, and do you how does that make you feel about that business? Founder stories as well are great to understand where they're coming from. But that, when you get into the next generation of that business, which might not be the founder anymore, how do you create that to make it a story to tell, I guess?
Okay. No, definitely. I mean, I've been banging the drum for the franchising brand story for years and years, and it's having invested in a franchise myself, that was the thing that drew me to the franchise itself. It was the individuals and their story and their journey into the franchise itself, which was the attraction. Okay. We haven't any questions in the chat as yet. You're very welcome, anybody, if you want to put a question up on the screen. I just want to make sure that we are still broadcasting live, which is always a bit of a worry. Let's make sure.
I'm sure there are people that are quietly listening whilst they're munching on their whatever their lunch may be at this time of day on Friday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so I mean, look, yes, recruitment is challenging, and I think when you look at the US, for example, how the landscape's changed over the years in the US in terms of recruitment. The brokers, they're using brokers a lot more to recruit their franchisees. There's been a shift or an uplift in the number of in multi-unit franchising, which I guess is quite logical, isn't it? Because if you're struggling to recruit new people, then you got to start looking inward into your network itself. Have a look at the people that are already in the network and see if there's an opportunity for them to grow.
There's certainly been a few brand stories of people that have done that as well, where they sort of started off the franchise maybe they saw it as a one person, one unit operator, whatever that looked like, whether it was thank you, Angie. Yes. Whether you're just a one-person operator or anything else, so it does. It is very much a challenging arena as well.
But that's an important point, isn't it? Because as a franchisor, you can get you can say, okay, recruitment is tough at the moment. It's difficult bringing new people in. So the logical thing to do then is to start thinking, well, okay, let's start building the scaffolding around the existing network. Let's start driving that network performance, because you and I both know the reason you go into franchising as a business is not about selling franchises, because the euphoria of selling a franchise soon wears off, or certainly the money does anyway, very quickly. It's about the ongoing relationship that you have with those existing franchisees and the revenue that they're going to deliver to you as a franchisor over that 5 years. So 5 years, 10 years plus, whatever it may be. So the logic says, okay, when recruitment is tough, when things are difficult, look inside the network and see whether there's opportunity to raise the game within the network in terms of performance, whether that be bringing in additional resource to support and help franchisees, for example, business performance coaching or whatever it may be. Is that a naive thing to think, or is that sort of in keeping with your experience?
Yeah, I think it depends I think sometimes it depends on the mindset of the franchisee when they came to you. So if you originally said in your marketing material, whatever, about it being a man in a van or a woman in a van or whatever type of business, and that's what attracted them to you as a franchise, you've got to bring them on that journey to expand. Now, there are some people that think, okay, I can open multiple areas or multiple locations or whatever, but that may not be what they wanted. So you have to be a little bit careful about bringing them along. When it is difficult, you can look at that and see if you can bring them along the journey and encourage them to do so. So it's about working with each of them to try and see, are they likely to do that? Can they do that? Are they still quite happy? That's often another issue, is franchisees getting into a state of comfort, and then do they want to take a reduction in their income to begin with for another area or whatever, because there may be a slight dip initially before it gets better.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And I've seen where that's worked well. And we've all seen other stories where they've someone who's very capable of running one but not so good at running two because they can't split their own time. And
therefore, sorry, just on that point, should you then be recruiting for scale? Should you be looking at recruiting people then that have the ability to scale out?
Well, yes, you've got to. I think as a franchisor in any business, you've got to look, where are you heading to? And now we talked about headwinds a little bit, and we've also talked about you never know quite what's around the corner, but you've got to have your own plan. The plans can change, but you've got to certainly be thinking 3, 5, 10 years. Maybe the 10 years is a little bit more distant because it's so uncertain, but you should have a view of, okay, I want this, that, and this is how I want the business to develop over a period of time. It's being an ex-banker, you like to see someone with a 3-year plan, but the reality is you've got to think longer than that in most instances.
Yeah, and do you know what I think, and that's one thing that we don't talk about a lot, is the bank's support for franchising. They're not. I'm sure we'll talk about regulation and whatever, but that's never been an issue for the banks, has it? That the franchise industry isn't regulated, and the bank's confidence in franchising says a lot, doesn't it? And I think that's underplayed as well. I don't think enough emphasis is put on that. And in times of trouble. That's going through my head at the moment, but
that's right.
The banks are still going to be lending to franchises, and that's got to be possible.
I mean, we would. This is talking with my banker's hat on, and I don't know if that's changed in the last 4 or 5 years, but I wouldn't expect so. I mean, we would look at the business and make our own assessment of it, as a franchisee is doing. And you, as a potential franchisee, you can't rely on the fact that the bank is happy to lend to be that you're happy, because it still might not be right for you. It might not earn you enough money. It might whatever. But it's often useful in this day and age because a lot more people borrow than they used to, because the average cost of setting up a franchise has gone up quite substantially over the last 20, 30 years as well. So understanding if the bank is going to support, even if you've got the money, is probably a good point of reference. Maybe not just a couple of the banks, because some people may have had a different view to someone else. So it's good to hear those views.
So do you think the broad franchisee avatar then has changed? I mean, again, when I first came into the industry, it was about people looking to invest their, not so much life savings, but they're taking redundancy. I can see a lot more people that come into franchising now from an employed position. Having that those not savings, but having that redundancy. Is that fair?
I think one of the things we've seen here for sure is a lower level of disposable income. And if you think about how many jobs I've only had 3. I think what's happening more recently is there's a shift to doing different jobs over a longer period of time. So I'm coming to my point here. So whereas you leave maybe a long employment because of redundancy and you get a very nice amount of money, you get quite a minimal amount if that happens to you now. So
Yeah.
the lack of disposable cash is perhaps not there. Also, obviously, with the cost of living going up, that may diminish the amount of savings people can get, or it takes longer to get the savings that they were expecting. So, yeah, I think the making a commitment, okay, I've always wanted to do X, Y, Z, whether it's own your own house or buy a business franchise, hopefully, was it is harder to do for the average person, I think.
So what we're talking now then, in your experience, are people coming into franchising for capital growth or income replacement, or is it still a mixture of both?
I think it's definitely a big mix of the two, for sure. I mean, having said that, someone may come in with they want to replace their income just for a job, for argument's sake, but then they actually realise I can really grow this business for my family's future and bring family members in and grow it that way. Maybe one member of the family runs one site or one location or whatever. So it can change the family position as well as the individual as well. And I know many of us probably listening in or here have got family members that love franchising so much they joined.
Not for me, no. Listen, it's really great. Thanks for that, Mark. Remind me that I want to ask you a question about that in a minute. But let's get our audience involved here. Here's the man, Harvey Tuck, H-Dog. Mark, great to hear your thoughts on lending. How much influence does the franchise model give to the lending decision versus the traditional new start business? Harvey, thank you for that question, mate. I really appreciate that. And Mark, how would you take that one on?
Well, that's a great question, Harvey. And I mean, if it's a new franchisor with less track record, you're going to treat it a little bit more cautiously as a banker, because we don't like risk as an industry. So I think for a new franchisor, you'll probably find the banks may only lend 50% of the setup costs for it. But if you're an established, proven concept with success in banking terms being seen, you're more likely to see 70-75% for a well-established franchise. But I'll always caveat that, because the individual that comes to you or the business that comes to you may have a good track record with the bank as well. So if you've run multiple businesses and have been successful, your success going to a different type of business is not necessarily going to have any impact. There'll be a balance of that, I think, in terms of that. But if you're new to franchising, looking at a newish franchisor, you're probably looking at more 50-50, established one more 70-30. But I think you can get a little bit hung up on the loan to value. The most important is what can the business afford. So they might not afford 50%, they may only afford 20%. So that might be what you're looking at when you're looking at the loan repayments that have got to be made and everything else. So that's, the loan to value becomes irrelevant. And if you're looking at a multi-unit, multi-site, there's already lots of cash flow in the business. So you may be looking at 100% for the next one because the cash flow warrants it.
Yeah. I mean, we've struck a chord with our audience here.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Yeah.
Angie's asked the question there, it's unreasonable to expect someone to have over a certain amount of liquid capital available based on the current economic climate. That's a good one, isn't it? That's a good one.
Well, I don't think my opinion would differ, because I've been in various different economic positions recessions and otherwise during the course of my banking career, not so much recently, obviously, but that has never really changed, because one of the good things is that franchising normally is quite robust and strong during that period. So the percentage banks lend doesn't tend to drop just because of a recession, because you've still got the track record of all the existing franchisees. I mean, it was I'm still a banker during COVID, and the amount of support that franchisors were giving their franchisees to try to help them as best as possible, pivoting to do delivery where it never existed before for some of those QSRs we've talked about, and that stayed in the business. So there's a lot of things that happened then, and the support that happened in a recessionary period, or a particular period of time, that the banks will be looking at going, actually, they were really good then as well. So why would they not still be supportive come the next event?
I can only share my own personal experience. And there's a good franchise commentator that I respect a lot, who says his rule of thumb is 3. If you're going to go into franchising, you've got to have the ability to invest or have the liquid capital to buy 3 of them. Just to buy one of them, you've got to have the liquid capital available to buy 3, and that way you're not overgearing, and you're also giving yourself enough working capital to grow a business. Because this is the problem that I might be on my little soapbox here, so I do apologise. But as a former franchisee who went into it, and quite unashamedly, because I needed to buy myself a job, so I didn't quite have enough capital, to be quite honest with you, and that always hindered the growth of my business, always. And again, I think when we look at, and when the debate happens around what makes the difference between the top performing franchisee and somebody that isn't performing, well, invariably in my experience, the people that are performing at the higher level also have the capital to do it as well. Because remember, if you're replicating a successful business format, you've got to make that investment to get to where the franchisor has been in the past. Is that naive, or is that?
I'm not sure about investing in 3, because you might not want 3 at that point, or your view might be that we want the first one to help generate the cash for the second and the third. So you don't, but then by doing that, you don't appear as a prospect in the first place if you're waiting for those funds. What I do believe in myself is you need to have a look at whatever your financial plan is, and what happens if your income drops by half, or you've got to sensitize those numbers, and actually banks will do that anyway, no matter what, because they don't necessarily see that every franchisee will achieve the best possible numbers, so they'll always be sensitizing. But you could say, look at it at 30% of sales, but don't forget to sensitize all the other lines, because you won't have the same number of staff if you're only doing that amount either. So make sure you do that. And I think sensitizing it down significantly probably has the same result.
And this is leading me back into another little avenue, the franchise resale. Probably the best kept secret for anybody looking at investing in a franchise. And that's where it does become more palatable for income replacement, right? Because you're buying an existing business. It's going to hit the ground from day one. Again, I can only use my own experience. As I said, I didn't have the luxury when I gave up my well-paid job in the BFA to go become a franchisee. I needed to hit the ground running. So for me, it was a resale, and an underperforming resale, because I knew I had to have the potential to be able to buy it in the first place, and then use my know-how, skills and ability and chutzpah to rise it to the next level. So resale we mustn't underestimate the importance of the resale. And when we're talking about recruiting franchisees, that's a whole different marketing strategy, isn't it? You can appeal to a different audience of individuals.
Absolutely, but I mean, maybe not what you've just described there, but often the resale is for a positive reason. Maybe to realise capital, to move on to something else, because there are people that started in a particular franchise and sold that, moved on to one that has a higher turnover or more investment or whatever, but the first one is a stepping stone to the next. I've seen that happen on a few occasions in the past, so you can't dispute that. But the other thing with a resale, if it's going well, it's probably going to be a higher cost to just starting a new location. So you've got to have more contribution in the first place. But of course, there is the known income, and you should, as you say, you should, if nothing else, continue as it is at that point in time. But
but that's part of the strategy then for a franchisor. If you're looking at the whole recruitment market, if you're looking at your network and who's performing and isn't performing, then potentially you can see an underperforming franchisee and have a really positive conversation with them about an exit, because you know that that's a resale, it's underperforming, and given the right individual that you can attract from the workforce, for example, to come into that, they're going to drive your management service fee up. So there are lots of different ways of growing your network without just bringing in.
Very much so. There's things that are beyond the franchisor's control as to what's going on with that franchisee as well. I was chatting to a franchisor last week at a seminar who was saying that he had a franchisee that was always seemed a bit down, discovered that they were going through a bit of a sticky relationship situation, so it was bringing the business down. Now he exited that, met a new lady, and the business started flying because it was nothing necessarily to do with the franchise. They were supporting as best they were. It was down to how they were feeling at the time. So getting to know what's driving or what issues are affecting the franchisee when they're not performing as expected is a real key. And can you do? I mean, that probably took a while to happen. But there are things that might be going on in the background that you don't need to help.
You discover that with boots on the ground, aren't you? Absolutely. An AI program's not going to tell you that somebody's having a tough time at the moment. I mean, you need to have your boots on the ground and your franchise support infrastructure to build those relationships.
AI can help in terms of how the performance is going, and you can drive the data to death. But what is the issue there? The data might be saying things are not going well, but what are they not doing? What is happening in their particular area? There could, who knows what it is? As you say, you have to get to understand exactly what they are.
I'm incredibly grateful to our audience. Thank you for staying with us, but also for asking some questions. And Harvey, low-cost franchises are definitely becoming more relevant as the economy becomes more fragile. But does less investment mean less risk and less return?
Well, risk. So if you're investing your life savings and it's 100,000, if you're investing your life savings and it's 5, it's the same to the individual. So it's still as risky for that person, whether it's a lower investment. It depends what that investment is and how they've got that. If that's their life savings or all they can afford or whatever, it's a risk to them because it can impact on their future if their savings are eroded. If I guess the investment level is less relevant there. Obviously, if you're just thinking, I'm not going to invest 100, I'm only going to invest 10 or whatever it's going to be, it is less risk, and you by implication you're probably going to get less return because it might be what you can achieve is lower as well. Maybe it could be wrong, it could be something different, but I would have thought
the low-cost franchise is bringing, it's to be welcome, and it's bringing in a different type of franchisee avatar as well, isn't it? Think about how many the children's network that starts off by recruiting owner-operators, but then realise that if they're going to get real enterprise growth, the franchisees have to switch to more of a management franchise structure.
And that I've seen that time and again. Some very well-known brands that started off saying, we just want to do, our franchisees just need to be part-time. And then as the business gets successful and they can see what a full-time person can earn, they start saying, well, actually, we want full-time people. We don't want part-time. So then you've still got a bunch of people that are bought, as I was saying earlier, they bought the franchise because that's how it was sold to them, maybe, or promoted in the early days. You can run this part-time to everything else. Then as a franchisor, your strategy changes, and then you've got to accommodate the franchisees you've got, who've probably done you proud for the brand and built it in areas and what have you. So that's a tricky situation for any franchisor to handle.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, look, I mean, this is great. I mean, we started talking about recruitment, and obviously as a franchisor, you can get very disillusioned, particularly the more emerging brands, if you're not getting that lead flow, if you're not recruiting. But just from what we've talked about so far, I think it's quite clear that there are things that you can be doing. Although you might not be attracting, your funnel might not be filling up with loads of really good franchisee prospects, but there are certain things that you can do to make sure that your business is still growing. And I think that's really clear, isn't it? And we've touched on some good pointers there, Mark.
There's probably also some very basic stuff. And I mean, I know there are people that are here going, oh, we don't do that. Things like when you do get an inquiry, actually following up as soon as possible, because I think I've seen people saying about leaving it for a few days and then they've gone off the idea because they also looked at something else that came back to them immediately. So I think you can use, I mean, I know we talked about AI, but you can use AI to an extent to immediately respond by saying, oh, thank you for your inquiry. Here's a whatever. Whether that's AI or just the technology you use is debatable. But
you can I get something. I do get that. We did promise we weren't going to dive too much into AI.
Oh, no,
it's been flogged to death. But
it has indeed. Yeah.
I get that, and I love AI. I use it and whatever. I think AI is brilliant for telling the brand story. If you're lucky enough to be a franchisor that receives 500-600 franchise inquiries a week, or even a month, then AI can be certainly helpful in terms of managing that lead flow process and responding to people in a timely manner.
Well, much more it can do. I think most people have just sort of dabbled in terms of, touching the sides about it. They might have searched on ChatGPT and done a few things off the back of that. But I think you've got to embrace it and try and see if you can use it. I mean, if there was one tip I'd use is make sure you use a paid for version if it's anything to do with your business, and turn off the bit that says share what I learn with the rest of the world. You need to turn off that bit that says that.
So the franchise agreement, tell me if it's a good one or not. Automatically put in the public domain. Let me just want to park that there for 1 minute on AI, because what I want to do is let's just wheel back a little bit. So in your experience, and again, you're now very much driving franchise consultancy and supporting your clients at different stages. So what's working in franchisee recruitment at the moment then? I mean, what would you be telling? Where would you be telling your clients to spend their money?
Well, I think it depends on the I would say this, wouldn't I? So it depends on the type of franchise you are. So I guess if you're more of we talked about children's activities or business to consumer, you're probably should be making an effort to do things around Facebook, social media that other individuals will be looking at. That's quite social media friendly, I guess. So you'd be doing that sort of stuff there for them.
Are we talking organic here? Are we saying now you cannot over rely? Because I think in the past there's been an over reliance on portals, hasn't there?
There has, and they're less. I'll come on to that bit in a sec if I may. But then there's also, if you're looking for someone that's more professional, you might go on LinkedIn. But then I know for a fact when, as a recruiter, and you might say this yourself, is you'll do an advert on LinkedIn, you get loads of inquiries. But actually, when you find someone that's not come through that channel, they say, well, I never go on there. So you can't, there's still got to be some more, whatever the traditional channel is now to find it. So whether that's a recruitment site or or those sorts of sites as well. So you've just got to make sure that you sometimes you just got to give it a try and see if it works. And I know sometimes one site might be working well 1 month or year, and then that seems to die off. But one that has been okay has suddenly started to get more. What are they doing around that?
You don't know which one's working until you switch it off.
Well, absolutely. And the other thing that's happening now is that when you if you were to put into any search engine, well, most people will be Googling, won't they? Maybe ChatGPT or one of the others. What's the best franchise I should look for? What sort of things I'm looking at now? You always get the little AI tool that crops up first of all describing something. It may have some, from what it's looking at, it may come up with some suggestions, but you've got to think about the question you're asking in it. So SEO is becoming less important about what you're paying for clicks, because what Google and the rest are now doing, they're going around and looking at your website and how, talking about personal branding and all those sorts of things, how is it bringing their story to life? So Google are starting to do more of the, I guess, touchy-feely rather than who's paid for them for that particular word search, because that search is not coming back. And the other thing to think about is that when you do a search and you don't get that AI crop up, people are looking at it, so you might get an impression that you've appeared, but then the prospect is disappearing away from there and doing a bit more research and then going direct to the brand. So the third-party website has possibly been useful, but you won't, as you say, you won't know till you turn it off that actually it's better than you think, because it's brought up.
A mix then, isn't it? That's the solution, isn't it?
You've got to have a mix, yeah.
It depends where your life cycle as a franchisor. I mean, I haven't even asked you about exhibitions yet, but I mean, the exhibitions have to be still useful for merging brands, put them on the map.
Yeah, they can be useful as a launch platform, and people still like to go and touch and feel a brand, I suppose, and see what's out there, because at an expo you don't just get brands promoting what they do, you get to hear about the things to look out for in some of the seminars, what you should and shouldn't do, the questions to ask, and all those sorts of things. So it's more than just that type of thing. So it's a much more touchy-feely if that's what you want to do. And I know franchisors that will always go to an exhibition because it's worked well for them, and others have said, well, it's never worked well for me whenever I've tried, so I don't do them. So
a client approaching you then, an emerging franchise brand approaching you and saying, right, okay, we've got X budget, how will you work with them then to know where to spend that money?
But part of that is finding out who they want as a franchisee in that process. They could be quite specific. So if it's in a particular industry, you'll be going to anything that's related to that industry. So if they're looking for, not really out there, but if you're looking for somebody that needs to do something in the farming community, you'll go to Farmers Weekly or whatever, and you might be promoting yourself in there. So it depends on the business, but why would you not go to the portals that are out there, like franchise and the likes of those? Just you've got to spread it around and see what works, and you've got to give it a bit of time as well, because you've got to get yourself known. People have got to build trust in your brand. Hence why the personal branding, founder stories, and all those are sort of useful alongside it. So you've got to do all those things to begin with, and then you can work out what works.
That's
but
a huge
you may have a budget.
Point. Yeah, that's such an important point. How many franchisors think that we've got to get some more leads in? Let's turn the tap on now, thinking it's going to automatically fill the sales funnel. It doesn't. It's a slow burn, isn't it? It takes time. And you could argue that any spend that you're making now in franchisee recruitment, you're not going to see for at least 6 months, 6 to 8 months, potentially.
Yeah. Seems to get longer and longer each time that question is asked in surveys. It used to be 3 to 6 months. Now it's sort of 6 to 12, and you always hear of stories where a franchisor will say this person spoke to us 3-4 years ago. It wasn't right for them, but they've got the funds now, or something's happened, and they've decided, right, you're still around. I'm going to see if I can join you now. So there are those sorts of things that happen. So you can never tell. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to determine where they came from, because they'll see you in, for the reasons I said, they'll see you in different places and then come direct. But which one of those things was it that determined it was time to talk to you?
Yeah. I think however you do it, you've obviously, and we've already alluded to this, as a franchisor, you've got to have the resource and the capability to respond in a timely manner, and to take people through that journey and know who you want, and have that process. But it's a very tough discipline, isn't it? Think about a new franchisor that's probably got funding from the bank, and its business plan is based on recruiting X number of franchisees every year. It's tough, isn't it? It's a real tough discipline to make sure that you are just recruiting the right people, and you're not just chasing the initial franchise fee.
Not numbers is vanity, as often is the case as a banker. You talk about turnovers, vanity, profit, sanity, cash is king, and that sort of thing. So
I wish I listened to that. Mark, that's brilliant. I mean, look, we're on the back straight, really, because I think people would be keen to get back to work. But one of the things that I wanted to explore, we talked about recruitment, and which is fundamentally important, massively important. But one of the things I wanted to get your view on is, because I've got some very strong views about this, and that's mindset, franchisor mindset. How do you think that's changed over the years? Because I see a different breed of franchisor now to when I first came into franchising. What do you think about that?
I think the franchisor I'm not sure the franchisor mindset has changed. I think it's just evolved, because franchisors' mindset might be on growth. I want X number of locations. It might be based on bringing the right people into the business. So, social enterprise franchise, for example, want people that want to do good for the community. So I think there's more, but I think franchisors are all different, as they've always been. There are ones that want to make more money because they've got to satisfy their stakeholders, their shareholders, and those sorts of things. And then you've also got the mindset of, I want to make people successful. I want to be able to generate jobs in a particular area, because of their background, because everybody's different. So a franchisor's mindset could be everybody's mindset.
All right, let's narrow it down. How that if you look, when I first came into franchising, the term franchise partner was never in the dictionary of franchise. It was always franchisee. And a lot more franchisors now are calling the relationship a franchise partnership, which I think in itself is a problem. And I think that is also led to some of the issues we're seeing in the wider domain. Let's talk about Vodafone, for example, which has been is going to have a massive implication and an impact on franchising going forward, particularly around the question of. But if you look at the narrative, they're always using the term franchise partner, and I think, and again, as a mediator as well. I mean, most of the cases that I mediate over is where a franchisee just takes issue with the fact that they're being told what to do by a franchisor, or the franchisor has changed the way they're doing things. So what I'm trying to say there is the approach that franchisors are taking now is different to I've never, and again, I accepted this from the very get-go when I was a franchisee. I knew I wasn't a business partner. I knew that I was borrowing their know-how, their business format for a set period of time, which will enable me to pay myself a good salary and build up a capital element. And when the time was right, I'd exit it. So has the franchisor avatar become a little bit too naive in that respect? And the language that they use is not truly reflective? Have they become less sophisticated in describing the relationship at the outset? Are we flowering it up just to get people to sign the agreement?
It's an interesting point because language has changed dramatically across the piece for everything. There's sort of things that my teenage kids talk about, and they mean something quite different in my world. And there is a language has changed depending on who you talk to, I think. So I think franchise partner, it may or may not be right for them as long as they describe what it is that means. But partner can be quite a bit misleading because you're expected to work together, and sometimes you have to tell the franchisee you're not doing it right. You've got to do it this way. So I've seen probably a franchisee. I think is still a lot relevant, but I think I've seen franchise owner more than franchise partner. Because they own the franchise rather than just a franchisee. So I think they're owning something, they're in control of what it is as for their business, as opposed to a partner sounds not quite as strong. That is a personal feeling.
I don't know why it winds me up so much, but it really does.
Well, as I'm a partner for partner-wise, it seems a bit straight.
Look, franchising is a business-to-business relationship, and we talked, and this is some of the problems that we're seeing now, in modern day franchising. You're not buying a car, you're not buying, a piece of furniture. You're investing in a business, and that's where I struggle with some of the things that I'm seeing in the public domain, particularly around the Vodafone case. I mean, I completely sympathise, 100%, with people that have. But I mean, what was the mindset going into it? If they were sold the idea that they were going to be a franchise partner, and this is a true business partnership, then they're going to be a bit peed off, aren't they, with having things changed and what?
Yeah. I think. I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about Vodafone here, but I think one of the things as a franchisor, and this might be where the partnership has a part to play, or that word, is to enable you to grow, your franchisee needs to be successful. So you've got to make sure that they are profitable as best as you can, and not do something to the detriment of the network in that instance. Now, I mean, I'm not close enough to comment really about Vodafone. I can sort of understand why Vodafone did it, but I can also see why that's going to make a huge issue to franchisees. So I think it, and ultimately, when you look at how much Vodafone makes, did they really need to do that for that network of people? I don't know. I'm sure in the fullness of time, a judgment will be made.
But what comes out of it is going to have, I still sit in the camp of self-regulation, unashamedly and doggedly defends that. I can't think of any industry that's massively benefited from regulation, to be honest. And particularly franchising, its beauty is around its fluidity, it's around its, its relationship, and that can only be nurtured, encouraged for me in the self-regulated environment. I'm not.
There are other countries in the world that do regulation, and it just makes it a little bit more costly for franchisors.
We're not exactly in the Wild West, are we? I mean, look, this is why the BFA was set up in '77, because it was very much the Wild West, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But arguably, we are more cautious as our Britishness. We're generally more cautious than maybe some of those other countries of legislation, because everything's fantastic in the US. I'm going back years, obviously, in terms of it's brilliant in here, come and buy this, it's fantastic, and then you get a lot of lawsuits, and therefore regulation understandably follows. I think the banks here are stronger, I think, in helping to regulate than maybe some of those other countries, certainly the US for sure, because there's no.
But that was the point I made earlier. It never bothered the banks that the franchising industry wasn't regulated, was it? That didn't impact.
No, because we regulated. We always took our own view on the franchise concept, irrespective of what may or may not be regulated. I mean, there's plenty of franchise failures where there's been regulation and elsewhere. So I think my point really is just making sure you're in it together, Whether it's a partner, that's possible. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. You mentioned it there as to, is that too strong a word? You know, people refer to their other half as a partner as well these days. So maybe that's just part of the new language that us oldies have to get used to.
You nearly said old fart then, didn't you?
Oh, that's old gits, maybe the software going to use. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Us people with more experience.
Yeah. No, I get that. Listen, Mark, I'm gonna wrap it up because I've got to go and get some lunch. I'm starving. But listen, it's been brilliant. It's been really good to have a chat to you. I hope people have got something from it, and you know, it's not just the ramblings of two people that have been in the industry too long. But I think it's really important just to have an opportunity to talk these things through. You know, and from what you've said, I mean, yes, recruitment is tough at the moment, but we've looked at that and we've talked about that, and there are opportunities there that franchises can still grow, still, you know, drive revenues, even when they're not maybe bringing in as many franchisees that they want to.
And there's always somebody that bucks the trend for something, which might be just something that they do, or the industry that they're in becomes more attractive. As long as it's longevity, as long as it's got longevity, not just a phase we're going through.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, I think that your timing to come in as a franchise consultant is brilliant, and I think certainly your clients are going to benefit tremendously from your experience, you know, and your industry insight, and I wish you every success in that it deserves. And I've unashamedly put a QR code on the screen, so if people want to reach out to you directly and have a chat with you, they can do that. But
and like we are here, Simon, I'm not necessarily talking about what I do, but if anybody just wants to chat about anything, even AI is not off limits, because I know quite a bit about technology as being MD at Azure for so many years. And recruitment, I know quite a bit, got a few ideas on that for people, but I know we didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
But yes, anybody wants to talk about anything in particular, just a chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Angie. And that's great that people are still with us, Mark, and appreciate it. But that's the beauty of franchising, isn't it? You can talk about these things, you can kick them around. And if you've got any problems, just like a franchisee, any questions, any problems, any issues, the answers out there in the network. And again, within the franchise community, the answers are out there as well. So long may it continue. And this has been an experiment, and I hope it's maybe something we can continue have a regular slot, perhaps. I don't know, but
be delighted.
It's always good to talk these things through, and I think this year is going to be really challenging for franchising, both this year and next year as well. And I think the opportunity just to talk those things through and to put a roadmap together is really useful. So thanks for that, mate. Have a fantastic weekend.
And you, yeah, thank you very much.
And I will see you very soon, I am sure. Thanks for everybody watching. Take care. All the best.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Simon. Bye for now.